Hey everyone, and I'm back for the Linux news show. I missed doing this, I hope you missed it too, but me it's mostly because I love hearing myself talking, even if it's just in front of a camera. So this week I've got some catch up to do. We're gonna talk about the GNOME Foundation problems with the return of Sonny Pierce. We'll talk about the real issue here, which is not Sonny or other people, it is how the GNOME Foundation functions, basically. Then we have the AUR being under attack with a lot of malware infecting tons of AUR packages, and we also have a big roadmap for Firefox. Finally, Mozilla gets a little bit more transparent, and this is really good to see what they have planned in store. And we have tons of other things as well, including this message from our sponsor. So this video is sponsored by SquareSpace. If you've watched the channel before, you know about them. They are your all-in-one platform to create, design, publish, and manage your own website. They offer an entire suite of easy-to-use tools to make sure that your website not only looks good, does the things you want it to do just in a few clicks, but also ranks well, and they give you all the tools to manage that website after that. So of course, to create the website, you have the website builder, you've got plenty of templates for all types of websites, and then you have pre-built page layouts to create pages in an instant instead of designing each one by one. Although if you want to do that, you can, because you can reorder elements on screen, change the colors, the fonts, and everything. And Squarespace doesn't just cater to small websites for individuals or small businesses. They can handle multiple contributors with permissions that let you manage each user's access to each features, and to make sure that you have perfect control all the time, they also have a mobile app for Android and iOS that lets you receive notifications for the sales on your online store. It lets you manage this payment and inventory as well, and it gives you all the metrics that you need to see how things are going. So check out squarespace.com/TheLinuxExperiment to give them a shot. They will give you a 14 days free trial, and you can also get 10% off your first purchase for a website or a domain name. So let's begin with the GNOME Foundation thing. You might have seen it while I was on vacation, because that's about a week old now, but this sort of shook up the GNOME sphere again. So you might remember a few years back, one GNOME director, which I will remind you, GNOME directors are elected by the community, so one director, Sonny Pierce, was ousted from the board. This was done without much transparency. No one really talked about what led to this, what went down. We just knew it was some kind of code of conduct violation, but we had zero idea on what happened. Sonny never talked about it, the GNOME Foundation never talked about it, and when there's a vacuum of information, of course people's imagination will fill it, so it led to distrust and wild claims on both sides. Sonny recently published a blog post on GNOME's discourse, which explains things just a little bit, but still not enough. This all happened because Rob McQueen is running for the board again, for director of GNOME, and well, let's say a lot of people were sort of attacking his previous tenures, and Sonny Pierce chimed in as well. So he says that basically when he became a GNOME director after being elected by the community, he found that the situation was very dysfunctional. Invoices were going unpaid, contractors weren't getting their money, emails went unanswered, and that was all at the time where the GNOME Foundation got a 1 million euros grant from the Sovereign Tech Foundation. A point in time where you know there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on what you spend your money on. So Sonny was presumably concerned about all of this, and he brought the issue to other directors and to Rob McQueen specifically. He tried to address the issue in meetings, people told him, yeah, it's gonna be fixed, and then he got notified that some people hadn't been paid for months, so yeah, it hadn't been fixed at all, at least according to what he's saying. So he started a meeting to talk about this and try to address all of these problems, and apparently no one really took responsibility for anything. Rob McQueen even blamed the STF for not paying the invoices, and then Sonny lost their temper, which led to him being banned, even though he apologized. People who are both members of the GNOME Board of Directors and the Code of Conduct Committee decided that they really wanted to ban him, and he was banned for a while. The meeting that he had started, or planned at least in the future, to inform the whole board of directors of all these problems and issues and malfunctioning things, this meeting was just cancelled. And then Rob McQueen was reelected, and he basically said, yeah, Sonny is out, but we're not going to tell anyone what happened. Sonny also said he was asked to sign a non-disparagement agreement, which we regularly call a gag order in most circles. Basically, the GNOME Foundation told him, hey, you're not talking about anything that happened at the GNOME Foundation, because this will hurt our reputation, and we won't defame you publicly instead. Sonny said that there was an independent review conducted about the way he lost his temper and what happened, and they didn't ask him any questions at all about anything, and things moved on from that. So Sonny was later unbanned by the new boards of director, but there was a campaign to get him banned again. So Sonny came out to push against Rob McQueen's re-election as a board candidate, saying that he assumed no responsibility for the failures in the past of the GNOME Foundation, that he failed to get a renewal of the STF grant, which instead went to KDE, and he failed to deliver on promises made around FlatHub 2, specifically adding payment systems to FlatHub to buy applications. This has been in discussion for like 7 years now and has not happened. And apparently Rob McQueen even set up a meeting to talk about those things with KDE, and he didn't even show up to it. So Rob answered to try and mitigate these claims, because let's remember, this is all what Sonny says happened. We don't know what happened. So we have the other point of view, which is the one for Rob McQueen. He said that the actions listed by Sonny weren't his alone. There were decisions of multiple boards and multiple executive directors. He says that this happened during a very stressful time. He recognizes he got some things wrong though, but we don't get any more information on whether what Sonny says is true or not. No one is denying those things either, so it's all very nebulous. The crux of the debate seems to be that Sonny says Rob knew about all the problems that were happening at the foundation, they couldn't run or operate properly, and he hid it from the board for years. And Rob isn't acknowledging that at all, so that's the main debate. Unfortunately, the conversation did not evolve positively, as some posts from Sonny after that were just hidden, reported as being flagged by the community, so we don't know what he said and no one can look at it. Now, this is a big, giant mess, which paints a picture that I think most people already had, which is that the GNOME Foundation doesn't really seem to function. Now, this is all according to Sonny Pierce, so we have to trust what he says, or we have to not trust what he says. That's for you to decide. I think the main big problem isn't that the GNOME Foundation doesn't function, because I think we all basically knew about this. They were in real financial trouble. They went through executive directors like handkerchiefs, and basically everyone who got ousted or left, we never really know what happened, seemed to have been in sort of middling or bad terms with a lot of people there. So it seems that there's a big problem. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is the full lack of transparency on the part of the GNOME Foundation. When an elected director gets ousted, he was elected by the community, by GNOME members. You need to be fully transparent about what happened there. You need to let the community know what led to the code of conduct violation, what exactly was the code of conduct violation, not just a few articles that could mean anything and everything. You have to let people know, because this person was elected. You can't just remove them like this and not tell anyone why. You don't have to go into the specifics of exactly which words were said, but you can say he was very offensive, he was very aggressive, he tried to intimidate, he tried to blackmail people. I don't know, just find something that defines what actually happened, because when you don't, it just looks like you didn't like the guy and you decided to oust him. And honestly, judging from the accounts of Sonny and what is being said or not denied afterwards, what it looks like is Sonny ended up finding out that basically money was going either missing or was used completely improperly, or people were actually not doing their jobs at all. He said, hey, you need to fix this. People didn't fix it. He said, I'm gonna tell the board of directors about this because this is really bad. And then he got kicked out and no one told the board of directors. That's what it looks like. And we don't know better because the GNOME Foundation doesn't communicate transparently. It is an open source project. It is dependent on the funding of actual individuals, not just grants and other sources of funding. You need to be transparent. Do better, GNOME Foundation, or people will keep distrusting you, and the distrust on the GNOME Foundation reflects badly on the GNOME desktop. People conflate the two. They will say, hey, look what happened at GNOME. GNOME sucks. It's not GNOME that sucks, it's the foundation that seems to be fully dysfunctional. The GNOME project is a good desktop. It just has its reputation ruined by people at the GNOME Foundation, miscommunication, and problems there. So GNOME Foundation, if even half of what Sonny said is true, please fix your shit. This is unacceptable. And if what Sonny said is not true, well, come out with a statement and proof that it isn't. That would actually alleviate a lot of the concerns people have. Now let's talk about malware. Arch Linux apparently is widely infected, at least on the AUR, with packages containing malware. Initially it was thought it was only 400, then it was 900, and then it ballooned to over 1500 packages being infected. These contain Plasma applets, Firefox itself, the Aura browser, LibreWolf extension, some plugins, some Node.js packages. Basically, everything and anything has been infected with AI-made malware that managed to obfuscate its presence, because technically the AUR packages are reviewed by humans, but this is not straight in the package build script. It just added an obfuscated command to download an npm package that is itself infected. It's called atomic log file, and it is installed alongside the software you actually wanted, which made it a little bit harder to detect with just a cursory review of the package. And then right after this malware started popping up, other packages were infected. This time not with malware, just with messages in Russian, insults or offensive messaging being slaughtered in various configs and presumably also appearing inside the terminal when you try to run the software in a terminal. Apparently 70 packages have this spam, including Python and Ruby packages, llama.cpp and more. These are being detected and removed using an LLM, apparently, so you're fighting AI crap with AI crap, so at least the AUR can be cleaned up from all that mess. And to try to mitigate these attacks, Arch released an update to Yay, which is their helper to install stuff from the AUR. It won't fix the issue, but it gives people more tools to review packages before installing or upgrading them on their systems. Basically, it gives you the last modification times. It shows you how recently package builds was modified straight from the search results. So you can see, hey, this has changed like yesterday. I'm gonna wait a week before applying the update just to see if something wrong happened. And you can now also build specific configs using Lua to automatically exclude packages that have been very recently modified. So it lets you delay updates a bit. So if at least a package has been infected, you're not installing it right after that. You might be installing the update after the infection has been detected and removed and or fixed. Now this won't and can't replace human reviews. We still need human reviews in basically every package manager out there and every repo out there, but this at least maybe lets distros build specific configs saying, you know what, our policy on the AUR is to only offer updates after a week and a half, because yes, it defeats the purpose of the AUR being bleeding edge most of the time, but also it makes sure that if something has been infected, we have a wider window of opportunity to detect it and fix it. Personally, I don't think the AUR is a suitable repo for a lot of stuff. It's just user-submitted packages. I wouldn't trust it myself. Even though, yes, there are humans looking at it, this is proof that it is not enough. That's not to say other options are fully safe and secure, because they are not. But when you have officially validated packages straight from the developers in the forms of Flatpaks or snaps or even just distro repo packages that have been vetted by a third-party maintainer, I would say use that instead. The AUR is for optional, small, really small things that you really can't find anywhere else or you can't be bothered to compile, but it shouldn't be the main base of your system because this happens more easily on the AUR than on other repos. In one of these weekly shows, I talked about Mozilla and basically asked them to be more transparent about their roadmap, and that's exactly what they did. They shared a big roadmap. They actually built a website for that, much like what Thunderbird did, and this contains some interesting things. So first, you're gonna get customizable keyboard shortcuts. It's already there in experimental form. Next, there's their Nova redesign, which we talked about a few weeks ago. A full revamp of the UI, looking pretty good, at least in screenshots. It's the modern, flat, rounded look, but it is nice looking. There's also the settings being revamped, it's pretty cool. There's also the ability to share collections of links all at once that they want to work on. They also want to work on an extensible search or URL bar that would help you navigate inside of websites directly. There's better autocomplete support, the ability to pop any web page into a picture-in-picture window, not just a video, so you could have a PDF document that is always on top, or a specific web page, a smaller version of it, always on top. Pretty useful. In terms of privacy, they want to bring their VPN to the mobile versions of Firefox too, which is good. There's a redesigned private window that lets you clear all the data in one click instead of shutting it down and reopening a new private window. And there's also an ad and tracker blocker being planned for the iOS version of Firefox, which is cool because not many mobile browsers have an ad blocker by default. You can install those in iOS for Safari, for example. You can install those in Android too, but by default, that's not that many. There's also support for passkeys in the integrated password manager. There's not too much AI crap either. There are only 2 items listed in terms of AI. There's the smart window things you can already try, and there's an iOS feature to ask questions to an AI using your voice. And that's it, which I think is very reassuring for where Firefox is going. There are also improvements planned for the speed of the browser, specifically trying to improve page loading. They're going to bring a resource monitor to Firefox for Android to see which tabs use the most memory, and a power saving mode to that same app to automatically turn off the tabs that use too many resources. And we're not done yet. There are more fingerprinting protections going. There are support for more web APIs. There's support for HDR on Linux, JPEG XL, better CSS support, and more. That's not bad, and I'm really glad they decided to go more transparent on all of this. As an open source project, it is nice to tell the community, we listen to all of your feedback, and this is what we decided to focus on. This roadmap isn't bad, although it is not a roadmap. It is at most a backlog, because you don't have any planned dates or quarters at the very least on when they want to release those. So it is a backlog or a wish list maybe, but at least we know what they want to prioritize compared to everything else that isn't in that roadmap. And I think those are good things. Those are all useful, good features that people would actually want to use. That's nice. Good job, Mozilla. Now, X11 is the thing that never dies. There's now a rewrite of it using Rust. It's called Y Server. It's licensed under the MIT license, and it's mostly written using AI, which instantly disqualifies it in my eyes as a viable day-to-day tool. It's not a clone of the existing X11 either. It's not a fork. It's a rewritten from scratch project that aims to keep X11 alive in a more modern code base. It uses Vulkan, it uses the direct rendering manager directly, so there's no middleware for graphics support. It seems to work with Mate, Cinnamon, and XFCE plus certain window managers. They also want FreeBSD support there, although that's not ready yet. It supports AMD drivers, Intel KB Lake integrated GPUs, the NVIDIA proprietary drivers, some Snapdragon and Apple Silicon GPUs as well. That's not going to be something most distros adopt because they all move away from X11. They're all moving to Wayland by default. Major desktops are ditching X11 entirely. But in the future, when this thing matures, people who really want or really need to stick to X11 might have a better option than the older code base that is basically spaghetti code that no one really wants to touch. Now, of course, running mostly AI-generated code as the display server of your system on an architecture that basically lets any app keylog anything you want is probably not the best idea, but who knows? If this project gets traction, it will get more human reviews, maybe more humans trying to add some code to it, and at that point it might become a little bit less weird, because I wouldn't run a fully generated AI project on my system if I could avoid it. Well, last week we also saw the release of the Linux kernel 7.1. It is relatively minor this time around, well, not in terms of the number of stuff that happened, but in terms of what it will bring to your actual Linux desktop or laptop. There's a new NTFS driver that's apparently much better, but it's not the default yet. There's a fix for the Steam Deck OLED audio. There are improvements to the Intel Xe driver for better memory management. There's better support for AMD P-State, meaning more AMD-based laptops will be able to automatically swap between performance profiles when you plug them, or battery saving mode when you unplug them. There's a new power management driver for Apple Silicon. There's more AMD GPUs moved to the newer AMD GPU driver for better performance and also Vulkan support, which they didn't have previously. There's support for Intel Thread, which should yield better performance for very recent Intel CPUs. Intel discrete GPUs will also have better performance. There's support for real-time kernel builds on ARM, and the usual file system fixes and performance improvements, the additional hardware support for gaming handhelds and laptops, and bug fixes, security fixes, and fixes for various regressions. Now, these performance improvements seem very targeted to very specific pieces of hardware. They're not like an all-purpose scheduler improvement plus 10% for everyone. So this is probably not a must-have update that is worth breaking your system over, but it is still very nice to always get those free updates, those performance improvements, those drivers. It's just cool to use Linux for that because things move quickly. Now, Chrome and everything based on Chrome is even less suitable as a browser and a browser base as it once was, because they now shut down another Manifest v2 feature, which will hamstring content and ad blockers, for example, uBlock Origin. The flag that allowed for Manifest v2 compatibility was now fully removed from the codebase, meaning any extension that made use of that won't work anymore. So uBlock Origin, other ad blockers, content blockers, they all will have to default to Manifest v3, which doesn't let them make as reliable solutions. Some people debate that, but the big names all said that this is really bad because, for example, uBlock Origin Lite using Manifest v3 is just not as capable as the Manifest v2 version. Now, some Chromium-based browsers said that they would maintain compatibility, but others seem to think that this is just impossible in the long run because this is just code being removed, and re-adding it back deep into the rendering engine is going to be a lot of work. Firefox though, and Firefox-based browsers still have that compatibility. They don't plan to remove it apparently, so maybe use something based on Firefox instead of Chrome. That's better, I think. Now this was announced, it's not a surprise, it's still a terrible decision, and it's yet another move from Google to try and control how the web works. The main rationale behind Manifest v3 was, we're gonna fix extension security, and this hasn't happened. Extensions are still vulnerable to plenty of other attacks, hasn't plugged any gap. It has just removed features for users, which obviously was the intended point, just they couldn't state it out loud. But in other bad web browser news, Firefox on Android will apparently depend on the Google Play Integrity library, meaning the application won't fully work on a lot of rooted phones and de-Googled ROMs that do not pass these security checks. It is intended to limit which apps can access Mozilla's infrastructure, so probably to prevent forks of that app accessing their AI features so they don't siphon tokens away from Mozilla. But the end result is that not all features of Firefox on Android will work on rooted devices or non-certified devices. The worst thing is that there are alternatives that they could have used instead of the Google library, namely one developed by the EU. Now, Mozilla, to their credit, said that they're open to looking at these, but that doesn't fix the immediate problem. Firefox is supposed to be the Google-free alternative that respects your privacy, your user choice, and lets you basically do as you please. This is not really following in those ethical guidelines at all. So please, Mozilla, hire someone at the community level, and when you have those kinds of decisions, trying to use a specific API on a specific system, maybe let that person talk to the community first, gauge how people will react, maybe let them suggest other technical avenues, and then push that feedback back to the developer team, to the project management, to the leaders, whoever makes those decisions. You need an interface with the community that functions. You need to learn how to communicate with people, because when you do those things, people stop trusting you more and more. The people who are still using Firefox, specifically on Android, which I think the market share there is extremely low, they're using you because they don't want any Google stuff. If you add Google stuff back into the browser or limit people's choices, then your market share is gonna edge closer and closer to zero. Now, of course, this week we got the release of Plasma 6.7. I made a full dedicated video about it. Go check it out if you want all the features, but the main headlines are the following. So you've got support for per monitor virtual desktops. You can have one desktop open on a specific screen and swap desktops on the second screen. This is really useful. This has been requested for 21 years, and finally someone decided that, hey, you know what? I want it, I'm gonna build it, and they did, which is really good. You also have plenty of performance improvements. You should save a lot of RAM when starting multiple windows that specifically don't rely on OpenGL, because they fixed the fact that KDE created OpenGL contexts for every application, even those that didn't use OpenGL. You'll also get some CPU consumption, CPU usage improvements in every Qt widgets based app. That's Dolphin, that's Kmail, that's Ocular, that's Kdevelop. So better performance all around. There are some visual changes here and there, mostly restoring the oxygen and air theme, but also adding some more feedback when you click on menu items. There's better keyboard input where you can long press a key on your keyboard and see all the accented variants of that letter, which is very useful, not just with the virtual keyboard, but also with a physical keyboard if you want. There are improvements to most Plasma widgets that you might have by default. There's a global push to talk shortcut that you can enable now. There are Kwin changes for much better portals and Wayland support. There are some changes in the settings as well for a few more options here and there. There are many visual changes to Discover too, which should look much better and function much better, especially when you have no internet connection. The warnings are going to be more legible. Deduplication of apps works better. The app headers, the app pages, the search lists, the updates pages have all seen many improvements. It is a fantastic version, but obviously if you want to learn more, the link to my video is down in the description. But obviously, since KDE will drop X11 with version 6.8 at almost the end of the year, some people will really want to keep X11 alive and keep running KDE. And so there's now SonicDE, which was just previously a few patches for Kwin to restore the X11 session, and now it's a full-on fork of KDE because they need to restore X11 in every part of the desktop where KDE has removed it or will remove it for 6.8. So this includes 40 repos from the KDE frameworks, from the Plasma desktop, and from Kwin, all renamed, of course, to Sonic Desktop Interface, Sonic Win, Sonic Workspace, and all of that stuff. Applets have also been patched, the login manager has been patched to keep supporting X11, and it changes to another theme to further differentiate themselves from KDE, so they don't just look like a basically rejig of KDE, they are their own thing. They're still mostly KDE though. There are packages already for Arch, Debian, Dev1, Artix, and some people are working on Gen 2, NixOS, and FreeBSD packages too. And I don't think it hurts anyone if this exists. People who want to use the actual KDE and like Wayland, they will use the actual KDE desktop. And for people who really loved KDE, but they really can't move to Wayland or they really don't want to, that's their right, well, they'll have this option at least. Now, what remains to be seen if that project can actually keep up with KDE's development and always re-implement support for X11, and more importantly, can they add the new features being developed for Wayland only to their own version of the desktop, because that's going to be the hard problem of it. Maintaining the existing version of KDE with X11 support and fixing bugs, that's fine, but trying to add the new features of KDE back to that SonicDE is going to be the tricky part, because sometimes X11 just doesn't support the things Wayland does, just like Wayland doesn't support everything X11 does. Now we have more details on how Ubuntu plans to add some AI features to the distro, the first one of course being speech-to-text everywhere. This is all lumped under what they call Project Mina, Mina being the name of a bird that can mimic human speech apparently. And basically this project would just be a global keyboard shortcut that you can press, it turns on the speech-to-text tool, you speak into the mic, it transcribes everything into text, it is automatically inserted into the currently focused app, and you're done. There should also be some visual feedback when talking. I would expect maybe a little panel indicator or an on-screen display element, like when you change the volume or the brightness, for example. It is just a speech-to-text feature. It doesn't power any form of voice assistant. It doesn't do translations. There won't be automatic language detection, so chances are it will only recognize the system's language, which will be an issue because I'm sure some people like me use their system in English, but would potentially like to dictate in other languages too. That's the first implementation. That's how it's gonna work. It runs locally, there is no internet connection needed after you install the model, but they mentioned that theoretically in the future they might let you plug something from the cloud instead if you prefer. It targets GNOME and Wayland first, it will arrive to other flavors later. Apparently they did it right, they will only grant mic access when the dictation is activated, so it doesn't listen to you in the background. Everything is deleted after use, they don't keep any logs, any archives of the audio, any transcripts. That's fine. You know, I don't like AI. I'll do everything I can to not use anything powered by AI, but this is actually an interesting feature. I don't know how the model was trained. I don't know if it's ethical or not, but this is a cool accessibility thing. It is useful even for people who don't necessarily have a disability. It is a good feature. It runs locally. It looks well implemented. If all of that holds true, they actually don't store or keep anything, I think that's not bad. Now, sadly, the European Commission decided to reject looking at the Stop Killing Video Games stuff. The campaign had reached enough visibility and signatures to be examined in the EU Parliament. The EU Commission also took a look at it, and the problem is they said that they will not propose a legal obligation to keep video games playable after they're no longer provided commercially, because they say IP rights already exist. They think right holders should have the exclusive rights over their creations, and they say that the EU already provides safeguards. Publishers have to inform consumers of the duration and conditions of a game's termination before a user buys the game. Which is dumb, because that was the actual problem. The publishers generally just tell you, we have the rights to revoke your license to use this software or shut down the servers anytime we want. We will notify you like 2 weeks before, and that's it. That's the rights they grant themselves, and that's the crux of the problem. You're not warned in advance, and they're not forced to keep anything running, even if people actually paid real money for that specific game. So the EU Commission completely missed the entire point of the campaign. Now, they still say they plan to have a dialogue with the industry and consumer representatives to look at building an industry code on managing these games, but this looks more like enforcing existing rules rather than actually forcing the industry to behave properly. Now, fortunately, the people behind the Stop Killing Games campaign knew that the EU Commission would just never do anything about this, because that's really not what they want to do. They're generally very pro-company when it's not a big tech company from the US, so they're not really going to look at that. What they're going to do instead is focus on EU Parliament members, which have the power to introduce law propositions and things, and apparently this has been received very positively in the EU Parliament, so that's the second avenue they're going to take, because the EU Commission just doesn't want to bother with this. Now, all in all, it is insane that the EU Commission would not even look at that, because imagine if that wasn't a video game. It is a music album. You buy it on a, I don't know, not a subscription service, just a music store. You buy it digitally, or even you buy the CD physically. But to actually be able to play your music, it checks with a server. And at some point, the record label say, hey, you know what, 2-pack, that's too old. We're just going to disable the server for anything linked to 2-pack music. And so your CD, when you put it in your drive, doesn't play anymore because the 2-pack server is down. Imagine that would be insane. Well, that's how it is for video games, so obviously this needs to be fixed right now. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this episode, and we'll finish on this message from our sponsor. So Tuxedo makes hardware that ships with Linux pre-installed. You can buy laptops, desktops from small form factors, more affordable devices, all the way up to giant gaming or workstation devices, whether they be desktops or laptops. You have plenty of choices for the keyboard layout on your laptop, plenty of choices for a logo or no logo engraved on your device, plenty of choices for the components inside as well. They can come with Windows pre-installed. They ship to most countries in the world. They're really, really fantastic. And you know that when you buy one, you get real good Linux compatibility. It's not playing roulette with your money, hoping that what you buy will work. It will work. I only edit and record and do everything on one of their devices. It's really, really fantastic. And as usual, the link is down in the description. So thank you all for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it and or listening to it, but most people just listen, I guess. You know where to click to support the channel. Please do hit all of those buttons. I hate reminding you, but this is always very useful for a Linux channel because we're small. And also you have plenty of links down in the description to support the show, to look at our sponsors, whatever. You know how all of this works. Thank you all for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!